Hello, everyone, and welcome to #Remember. I'm your host, John Nelson. Today, we're joined by the legendary William Billy G. Goldfeder. Serving as a firefighter since 1973 in roles such as public fire protection engineering rep in New York, a fire chief in 3 different states, and a fire instructor in every state except for 2, Billy's currently a deputy chief of Loveland Sims Fire Department in southwestern Ohio. He's also a best-selling author with his Pass It On book series, of which he donates 100% of its royalties to the NFFF, the Chief Ray Downey Scholarship Fund, and the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. Chief Goldfeder is an associate editor and monthly columnist for Fire Engineering, Fire Rescue, and Firehouse magazines in both digital and print media. Along with Gordon Graham, Chief Goldfeder hosts and sponsors firefighterclosecalls.com, a 100% non-commercial, independent, and free website dedicated to firefighter safety, survival, and getting everyone home. This website is chock full of information, and it's got a bunch of resources for firefighters. In my opinion, and in the opinion of many others out there, it's probably one of the most important websites in our industry today. Chief Goldfeder's accomplishments, awards, and recognitions could have an episode all into their own. The list is impressive and virtually unparalleled, including graduating from the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program, chairing the IAFC's Fire Officers Committee, being appointed as an honorary battalion chief for FDNY, the IAFSC's Fire Instructor of the Year, and the FDIC International Fire Engineering Chief Tom Brennan Lifetime Achievement Award, just to name a few. The guy's even got an award named after him from the IAFC and the VFIS. Just an amazing laundry list of accomplishments, sir. It's an honor to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Billy Goldfeder. Welcome to #Remember.
Hope my kids aren't watching this. They're going to vomit.
Well, we mean it, man. You're doing a lot for the industry. We really appreciate everything you do. Your passion projects are very much unparalleled in the industry, and we really do appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's all about having the opportunities and the avenues, and I've got a lot of opportunities and avenues to convey the things I want to get done. So it's pretty cool.
Definitely. Well, let's get right into it. Like I said, firefighterclosecalls.com, it's probably one of the most important websites in our industry today. Fire departments even use its drills to build move-up manuals for the various levels in their infrastructure. Additionally, the ever-evolving LODD calendar that you have is a unique one-stop shop for historical and educational reference. You've been a firefighter for a long time, and you've worn a lot of different hats. At what point did you decide that firefighterclosecalls.com was something that the industry needed? What set you on the path?
So what set me on the path was in the 70s, I was a firefighter in Long Island, and a neighboring department had a captain killed in the line of duty. They were responding to a van on fire, and a compressed cylinder in the van exploded and literally decapitated the captain. And it struck me as a young fire, and that was during a period of time we had 2 firefighters killed at a synagogue. We had 2 firefighters killed, and this was all in Nassau County. 2 firefighters killed at a swimming pool supply shop. A fire captain was killed when his apparatus crashed into the back of another. And what really struck me in each of these cases, not only was it sad, what really struck me is that the attitude was, hey, this is part of the job. In other words, this is a risky job. And as a young kid, I learned early, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use your ears and shut up. So at that stage, I was only now getting ready to become a lieutenant. So I really didn't have much opportunity to speak up. But it just kept striking me that every time we go to a funeral, it's part of the job, it's going to happen, And I get that, but it really, to answer your question, it resonated with me. Well, maybe it doesn't always have to happen. And back then, you would never question that. You would never question that, ever. Not like today when we talk about these things. But that was kind of a big deal. So the next step was there was an incident in Phoenix where a firefighter was killed in the line of duty. And I'd become friends with Chief Brunacini over the years. And what he did was pretty shocking. So this is like the next bridge to answer your question, was he came right out this is what happened. This is what we did wrong. This is what we would do differently. This is how we can improve. And his intent was to share that with everybody so we learn. So a lot of fire chiefs, well, whoa, what are you, crazy? You're going to get sued? The attorneys are going to bring, he says, we're going to get sued anyway. The attorneys are going to come in anyway. So why don't we just what are we not going to tell the truth if we go to court? So that really, I can tell you the moment that and where that happened, that discussion with him and I, we were at an IFC conference, and that, man, did that click. So bring around 1996, 7, something like that, I got my first computer. So previous to that, I was writing articles and sharing incidents with people, but in a much, restricted scale because we didn't have the internet. So I had an AOL account, and so I would start searching for incidents. And when they'd happen, I'd share with friends of mine. And this friend added to that friend, and that friend added to this friend and said, could you add on to the list? And anyway, long story short, that's where the secret list came from. And it was named the secret list. Originally, I would just put in the subject line, firefighter struck by car. So as the list started to grow, I figured out you could put things in a BCC column, blind carbon copy, so that you wouldn't see who else is on that list. So one day somebody said, who's on the list? I said, it's a secret. I don't know what the hell. I was just screwing with them, right? And after that, every time I sent an email about that, I put the secret list on it. And there's no, believe me, there wasn't 15 people sitting in a think tank coming up with this stuff. This was just ideas that we just started applying. So then I started doing a lot of on the road stuff for a group called Command School. There's myself, Bruno, Dennis Rubin, Carl Holmes, Gordon Graham, etc. And Gordon and I became really good friends. And he said to me, why don't you have a website? Well, at the time, I didn't have the money or the time. He said, well, when you have time, I'll provide the money. So I gave that a lot of thought and thought, this is a heck of an opportunity to be able to start sharing this kind of stuff. And so I reached back out to him, and we reached out to a company called firecompanies.com. We're based out of Pennsylvania, run by a number of firefighters. And I said, hey, I need some help building a website. And that's the history. And we're 20-something years into it now. And the secret list has hundreds of thousands of subscribers from all over the world. And Firefighter Close Calls, is pretty big. We're pretty proud of it. So that's the story. That's how it built up. As we got busier and busier, I really needed help. A firefighter, a chief officer out of Indiana, Brian Kazmazak, I did some teaching for them. And actually, it was funny. I went to do a class for them, and I brought 3 bins of VHS tapes with me. That's how I used to teach back in the day. And I would have my tapes all wound right to the right spot and play this and that. And Kaz came up to me and goes, he said, there's an easier way to do this. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. He says, so anyway, long story short, he taught me about computers and all that. And cool. And he now is really our director of operations. He's an active fire officer in Indiana, Michigan area. And over time, as we started to expand the site, we would pick people that were experts in their field or had a great passion for a certain, like we've got communications, we've got personal survival, which is mental health and behavioral health. We've got auto accidents, highway, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's how it got built up. And nobody makes any money. We accept no advertising. We accept no sponsorships. Gordon pays the bills. And that allows us to say whatever the hell we want. And sometimes, we're not worried about, if Acme Fire Truck screws up, we can write about Acme Fire Truck because they're not one of our sponsors. And I've seen, I sit on most of the advisory boards and stuff. I've seen where some of the other media organizations out there, and these are wonderful people, I'm affiliated with them all, sometimes have to be careful because they don't want to lose a sponsorship. We don't have that. We don't deal with that. So anyway, that's in a nutshell, the story of Firefighter Close Calls and the secret list.
Very cool. What's your take on what the site has become and what it means to the industry, and where would you like to see it evolve to in the future?
Well, I think we're kind of there. I've seen a lot of things in the internet, and I've come to the conclusion that, you can visit our site and we're not changing, because everything else is changing these days. You can go from one site to the other and they mix it all up and all. I think we've changed once and we clean it up once in a while. I mean, we got some pretty good techies involved in this, but as far as the layout, you don't have to look this week to see where that icon is. It's all the same stuff. So we like I think the familiarity is pretty important to people because we're a resource. Sure. So I like where it is. I don't know that, again, in a world where everything's changing all the time, I think there's a need for things to not change. Now, when there is a need to change or we want to add another category or something like that, we'll do that. But otherwise, we're sort of that comfortable place you go and no real surprises there. And where would I like to see it go? I pretty much just keep going and we've got to, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, the crew can continue doing it just fine without me. And that's, so we're pretty much there. Some people say change for the sake of change, and I've bought into that in many aspects of my career, but I don't think there's a need for a change. Our numbers continue to grow. Everybody, it's kind of the go-to place. We have phenomenal relations with all the other websites, the Fire Engineering and Firehouse and Fire Rescue One and all that. And they, we feed them stuff all the time. So, if it's working, why change,
Absolutely. Totally agree. Speaking of other resources, are there, or what other resources and programs are you currently involved in that aid in the prevention of LODDs and near misses? And I was hoping you could speak a little bit about your Pass It On series and your monthly articles in our industry's major publications.
Yeah, so I do occasional work for Fire Engineering. I'll do editorial work for them and stuff. Firehouse Magazine, I do Close Calls column. Fire Rescue One, I've got two things going on there, two columns. One is What's Your Problem, which is a video thing where people write in with problems and I give them my opinion. It's just what I think. It's so funny. I had city managers fire me years ago for my opinion and now people pay for it. It's kind of weird. And then, so I do that kind of stuff. And what I do is, that's all I really do is offer my opinion based upon fact and information that I have. So the Pass It On series. So we could chat about that because that was really cool. I'm very lucky. I'm blessed. Karma's been good, whatever words you want to call it. And primarily because of my family. I've got an amazing family, but career-wise, I've been asked many times to write some books, and I just didn't think, would you need another book to how to stretch a hand line? If you haven't figured that out by now, right? Or you need another book on command? Well, there's like 8 of them. So pick what works for you. So I thought to myself, and it really was in my mind for a while, what's the best I can do as far as doing a book? And so I'm on an airplane back when we could fly and I was reading Esquire magazine, and every month in Esquire magazine, they have a column called What I Know. And it really clicked. I was like, wow. And what they do, they invite various well-known people, Hollywood famous people, presidents, all that. And they invite them and they give them a full page to answer questions so they can then share their knowledge of life. And that's called What I Know. So that, bam, I hit that. I said, this is what we're going to do. Well, there was never any question. I wanted it published by Fire Engineering. I've got some friends who are in the professional publishing business outside the fire service, but I really wanted it to be published through them and because they understand our business and our culture and our what's the word I'm looking for? The people in our business. We'll just leave it at that. I reached out and I said, hey, I got this idea. And I listed it and they went nuts. They absolutely loved it. And it made me happy because I told them, I ain't writing this book. Harry Carter, who's a dear old friend, Harry said, this is the best book that I ever saw where you got all your friends to write it for you. And that's exactly what I did. All I did was write a few chapters, sticking my opinions and stuff in there. And I'd have reached out to about 100 people for each book. And I said, hey, I got this idea. I'm not making a nickel on this. You're not going to make a nickel on this. We're going to donate. At that point, it was just the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and I believe the Chief Ray Downey Scholarship, and then we added the Firefighter Cancer Support Network as a third after the second and third book. But I reached out to all these people. Literally everybody said yes. Everybody said yes, which I didn't count on, because
awesome.
that means I had to move a few around, right? But they, and you know, what I bring to the table is I know a lot of people. You know, my black book or Rolodex, or whatever you want to call it. You know, I've been lucky. I can call the U.S. Fire Administrator. I can call this one. I call the chief of this fire department. You know, so I've gotten to know all these people. So these are people that I'm lucky to know, but the firefighter in the street doesn't get to know these people. So that was the intent behind this, was to make it where these people could hear from Ray Downey's sons, who could hear from Dennis O'Neill, who could hear from John Salka, who could hear from so many, you know, like 180 people between the three books. And it was a home run. And I mean, the process was a lot of fun, a lot of work, you know, because, here's a little secret. I didn't read anything they wrote until the book was published. So I never read, because I was afraid that I would disagree with some of the shit they were saying. And I didn't want to interfere with that. I wanted to give them an open opportunity. I mean, there's people in this book that I don't necessarily agree tactically with what they're preaching, but the idea was to hear a lot of everybody, so then you see what works best for your community or for you as a fire officer, something like that. So that's kind of one of the things. Did you edit all this? Not me. I had a friend of mine, Amy Tippett and Molly Pegram, did the editing, as far as the, you know, making sure it was right, as far as words and English. But as far as reading it and editing it, absolutely. And I told them that from the beginning. I'm not going to read what you write. What I also did at the beginning of each chapter is I did an introduction to each of them. And some of those introductions are pretty lengthy, but it never tied into what they were going to talk about. It was just my opinion and my knowledge of this person as a friend, as a peer, or whatever. So it was really a lot of fun, and we've done 3 of them. We just this past spring released Pass It On 3. The subtitle is Making Good Progress. We really didn't have a kickoff because there was no FDIC, but the book is available. We'll do a little bit more of a formal kickoff at FDIC this coming year, hopefully. And we have a book signing every year. We'll get probably a half to 2/3 of the authors will show up, and we'll have 40 people in a row, and you go right down the row with your book and they sign it. It's a lot of fun. But I'm very proud of the books.
That sounds cool.
And well, and because of so many people we hear from, that these books have made a big difference to them. And again, no money to be made. And that makes it even better. We raise a little money for these groups. We've raised tens of thousands of dollars for these groups. We've done pretty well.
That's quite a comprehensive collection of people too. I mean, there's probably not anything that really exists like that out there. So very cool. We've talked about the books. We've talked about the articles. We've talked about firefighterclosecalls.com. The reality is these drills and resources are great, but let's be honest, you have to use them for them to count. You have to have gumption in this business. Whether it's your diet, your sleep, your training, we have to realize that an LODD often has very deep roots in the day-to-day choices that we make. So with that said, how does a low-level firefighter affect change in their department? What if they have a superior that's against training, or a fire chief that doesn't give priority to the implementation of a training division beyond pencil whippings and PowerPoints? How do the boots on the ground get their voices heard without being reprimanded or downtrodden for their efforts? How do we bring everyone together when so often the herd mentality is the less work, the better? The bare minimum is okay. How do you change that mentality from the bottom?
Well, you never stop throwing the mud. Make sure just understand that some will stick and some won't. I mean, that's a never give up philosophy. And I mean, I've been a training officer since the 70s, and I promoted up in the late 70s to lieutenant. And I've been surrounded by all kinds of knuckleheads, idiots, morons, and people who shouldn't even be wearing bunker gear. But it doesn't mean I'm going to accept it to be any differently. Now, yes, when you become an officer, it makes it a little bit easier. So let's address it from a firefighter standpoint or a brand new officer. You got to set the tone from day one. Again, let me address it as an officer first, then we'll come back to firefighter, because that is a different dynamic. As an officer,
Absolutely.
you have the we have the responsibility. So it's not like you really have a choice. And I saw a great quote today that Ray McCormick, and I put it on my Instagram feed. And it basically goes something to the effect of so many officers have let their firefighters down simply by not having daily training. Well, you know what? Just have daily training. Just have a drill a day. Just commit your career. And that can be career, volunteer. If you're volunteer, have a drill a week. And don't just get there and say, oh, what should we drill on now? Have 52 drills planned ahead for the entire year. Again, there's many places you can go. You go to Firefighter Close Calls. We have a full year's worth, multiple years worth of drills that are available to you right now. Okay. So that's the way you do it. And you make it where there's no choice. Now, I want to share a story with you about a fire officer who was one of my favorite captains who worked for me about 1 million years ago. His name was Danny Corder. And Danny had a crew that didn't want to do physical fitness. And Danny was the kind of guy who was doing fitness all the time. You'd go nuts around this guy. You know, you couldn't have fried food and all that. So Danny was all about fitness, but his crew was really balking at it. So he'd be working out, he'd be on the bicycle thing and all that, and he got tired of it. He says, come on, let's get on the truck. So he put his crew on the truck, and they went out to a subdivision. He got everybody off the truck, and he told the driver, go 2 miles down the road, I'll meet you in a little while. And he made everybody walk to the truck. He got them to do something. Oh, what if there was a fire? The truck would have come back for them. I mean, come on, don't be ridiculous, right? So that was, to me, so symbolic of a leader looking outside the box. How do I get these people to move? And if you can get these people to walk 2 miles a day, that's a good accomplishment. Now, maybe they're not lifting weights, but you do that enough, and then their belt starts to get a little looser. Their collar's a little looser. They go, hey, maybe, you know what? And that's kind of how you get the fire moving on these people. And now maybe we want to lift some weights, and maybe you want to do some push-ups. You know, I don't know. But you can't give up. It's not like it's your right to give up. If you're an officer, you've got to. Now, let's look at the firefighter and the officer who answer your question are surrounded by a boss that doesn't want to do these things. They just don't get it. Well, then you get a little subversive. You get a little bit, kind of sneaky. And you start posting things on the bulletin board in the firehouse of articles of where things have gone bad. You share email to everybody in your organization. You get a video of this thing going wrong. You get an article from Kurt Verone, who says about this fire chief getting jammed up in court. And again, everything I just talked about for the last 5 minutes on this subject to this question is about throwing the mud, keep throwing it until something sticks. I don't mean throwing mud at somebody. I guess you got to be careful these days, right? But I'm talking about don't let your enthusiasm stop. Don't let these people. Hey, people told me in the 70s I'd burn out. I'm still the fastest to get on the road, the most gung-ho, and I love the job. Now, do I know my place today? Absolutely. Is my place crawling down a hall with an air pack? Pretty damn rare. My place is to go there and support the young officers who are running these fires. And the question when I get there is, what do you need? How can I help? Right? That's kind of what I do. But I'm as enthusiastic. I'm gung-ho. I love the job. I'm not going to stop loving it until I either start drooling or a doctor tells me I got to stop. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. And that's what you have to have. You can't you're going to have people slowing you down all the time. Don't let that get to you. Move on. It's not easy. I get it. Once in a while, you're going to be bummed out. You're going to be down for a day or two. But then pick yourself back up and remember what it felt like the day you got on the job and get motivated. And you know what? Eventually, that chief's going to retire or they're going to die or something like that. And they'll move out of the way. And hopefully somebody more gung-ho or enthusiastic is going to take up that place. But you can't ever give up.
That's great advice. Well, Billy, your passion for what you do is undeniable. It's really inspiring to hear you talk about never giving up and all that good stuff. I want to talk about another topic, though. We've recently seen a lot of interest in the topic of overall wellness, to include your physical wellness, sleep, and your mental health. Have you guys been focusing on those topics? And do you know of any related overall wellness programs that you could recommend? I know you had mentioned a particular app that you've been working with as well.
Well, yeah. So I'll cover that. And then I want to get back to getting people to understand why this is important. So I'm not going to talk
Okay.
about physical fitness. There's a lot of experts out there. There's plenty of great websites, and you can refer to whatever you want. If you haven't figured out that you can't carry on another 150 pounds around you, if your belt is big enough to carry 10 portable radios, maybe there's a problem, right? I mean, it's that kind of stuff. You got to understand that you got to be reasonably fit for this job. It's that simple. So I'm not going to get onto that. If you haven't figured it out, if you're still smoking cigarettes and eating Whoppers and shit, I can't help you. I mean, there's got to be some understanding to that. But what we can talk about is the emotional health, the behavioral health, and stuff like that. So there's a company out there called Cordico, Cordico. And this Dr. David Black came out with an app that I think is probably the greatest thing. We use the term greatest thing since sliced bread. But, in today's generation, when you look around your firehouse, and I'm not an anti-millennial by any means. I love these new kids, and I'll take them all day long. I got some kids in my department, captains, and phenomenal. I love these kids to death. And the mutual aid departments we run with, these kids are home run. But many, many people these days are doing this all the time. When you get back to the firehouse, they're sitting in quarters, they're playing on the phone. It's just the way it is. It's the generation, right? I mean, nothing we can do about that. So Dr. Black came up with this really cool thing. And also, by the way, in my opinion, because this generation is so tied to that device, they're less apt to have one-on-one conversations with people, because they are able to text and they're able to face. I mean, go look at Facebook. People, you got a pimple on your butt, you're posting about that crap. I mean, it's insane. But yet you wouldn't go to your doctor about that pimple. Anyway, that's another subject. So my point is that Dr. Black came up with this app that goes between that issue. It allows you to do a self-assessment. How am I doing? What's my issue? How does my issue compare to other firefighters based upon data? Your fire department downloads your counselors, your peer counseling unit, your psychologist, your psychiatrist, your EAP. You actually see their pictures. You can touch it, get connected. It's phenomenal. So I'm not going to do a big commercial for him, but I will encourage you to put the link up there. It's a very valuable tool. And again, it's called Cordico. So check that out. It's nothing like you've seen before. Just imagine, though, your firefighter, when they're even having that bad day for whatever reason it might be, the difference between, well, I really don't feel comfortable talking to anybody about this, but maybe they're comfortable getting on that app and dealing with it that way. It really addresses the younger people we're dealing with today. Big deal. Okay. So, and it's
Really
wildly
smart.
popular. It's really, really popular. So
that's Cordico. Is that
that's
correct?
right. Yeah. And I'll email you
Okay.
the link and stuff after that and
Perfect. We'll
hook
post
you up
it.
with all that. Yeah. Cool. So,
Sounds good.
I came from a generation where perhaps my generation was more sensitive than the Vietnam and the World War II generation, okay? But now the generation we're seeing appear to be more sensitive than my generation. You follow me so far? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't mean they're soft. It doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It's just different. And that's a very key word in where I'm going to go with this story. So we had in our area here a horrible response that I wasn't first due, I was second due on. But this guy killed his kids, killed his wife, and lit his house on fire. So the first arriving crews, literally, and I can see it like it was yesterday, are bringing out kids with these kitchen knives in their chests. Right? It made national news, and it was a big deal. And I never thought going to this dwelling fire that I'd be seeing that. Now, I can tell you to this day, did it bother me? Of course, you'd have to be inhuman for it to bother me. But I slept fine that night. My attitude is our job is to go help people. What do you got? What's our goal? And what are my resources to do the best I can to fix you? And our crews, or the crews that first did phenomenal. They can't control what the situation was. However, following that run, a couple of people retired. way before it was time for them to retire. And it really clicked because I was sort of going through this transition of, oh, come on, suck it up, versus, well, I can tell you that kid calls bother me more since I've had kids than, that kind of thing. And now that I've got grandkids, more so, right? So I started thinking, how do I convey that to the rusty, tough, salty, old, or maybe not young, maybe a young firefighter doesn't really think it's a big deal, or an officer especially. And I relate it with this story. Let's say you and I and a friend, we go out for dinner and you order fish. Well, immediately I'm asking to sit at a different table because I cannot stand fish. It doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. It means I see it differently. That's all it is. So then after dinner, we all go to a movie. And we're laughing like a couple of firefighters at some stupid stuff on the TV screen or the movie screen. But our spouses are looking at us like we're some kind of idiots, and they're not laughing at anything, right? It doesn't mean we're right or we're wrong. It means we are different. And the sooner our peers and especially the most critical role in the fire service, our first line company officers, as soon as they understand that what they're seeing, if they see a young firefighter with a tear running down their eye, doesn't mean they're softer. It means they're different than you. That's all it is. So therefore, it needs to be addressed on how can we solve that. If I can't have fish, I don't like fish, I get steak, okay? If this firefighter is not having a lot of difficulty dealing with a situation, that's fine. If this one is, then we need to address it in that manner without it being demeaning, without you being a wimp, because it's nothing to do with that. Hey, I see some of these commercials Christmas time on TV with little babies and puppies. I'm bawling. It's just the way it is. It strikes me as a thing, right? But other stuff I'm looking at like, yeah, whatever. I don't give it, right? So it just means we're all a little bit different. And the sooner we understand that, the better. And now, as a lieutenant, as a captain, you have an obligation to understand that. You are responsible for the welfare of these people on duty on a fire or on duty in quarters. It's a big deal. And we need to open our minds up a little bit about that.
I agree. Everyone is different. And especially when we talk about the different socio-demographics that are coming in, you have municipalities that are, bringing in more women, more minorities, different age groups, trying to mix it up to reflect more of the city's demographics. And we're just going to have to be more accepting of each other, as humans.
And we need to stop acting like it's our fire department. I mean, I appreciate the ownership, and there's a level to that, but we also have to have the doors open and make people feel welcome in the organization. Yeah. I mean, we preach brotherhood and sisterhood, but I termed this number probably 25 years ago, BMA, brotherhood. Sometimes we can be pretty cruel, and we need to be aware of that. A lot of times we're having fun, but you know what? Just beware. Size your people up as you would size up a fire.
That's good advice. Billy, we want to thank you so much for joining us today on #Remember. If folks want to access some of the resources that we've talked about today that you offer, that you've cited, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
To reach me, just go to firefighterclosecalls.com and Brian or one of the crew there will relay the email to me. And I'm usually good at getting back, but I'm not great. So don't give up and just write back again. It's just, I just can't keep up sometimes. And I do my best. We're not some big corporation. We're just doing this on the side. We do our best. And we and Brian's really good. He'll sometimes say, hey, read this now. Like sometimes somebody's having a really, really bad day. And for whatever reason, they've reached out to me from some state somewhere, and we always get them in touch with the right people. So that's
awesome.
That's the best thing they can do. And I'm on Twitter.
What's the
Billy Goldfeder on Twitter and Instagram, Billy G Fire, I think. And I'm pretty active on those. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not a fan of how people treat each other on Facebook, and I just never felt like, you can control your environment sometimes, and that's a decision I made. So we're okay.
Billy, you were involved in a company officer program. You mind talking a little bit about that? You said it happened yesterday, I believe.
Yeah. So one of the companies I do some business with is Lexipol, and Lexipol owns Fire Rescue One, EMS One, and a number of other companies. And they're in the policy development business and the training business, and they host some webinars. Yesterday, I had a really cool opportunity to be on a webinar with a guy named Mike Mariachi. And Mike runs a program called Reset the Clock. And he's got a great program that teaches company officers how to deal with not going to fires, but deal with when you walk in the firehouse and you see a problem among your two employees. He's got a great system on how exactly you size that up and deal with the problem. So here's a link for it, and you can certainly share it. And people can view that at no cost.
Excellent. Yeah, share that with us. We'll definitely post it on socials and the site. No doubt.
Yeah, good stuff.
And another thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I say it's really good stuff.
Another thing that you do, and I'm not sure if you're still accepting this, and it's something I wanted to check with you. You kind of had an all call out there for a while for your LODD calendar that you were making. Is that still something you kind of have an all hands on deck approach to that, or if people notice that LODDs aren't on there, how do they get that info to you,
so just
or what's your system with that?
Yeah, just go to Firefighter Close Calls where it says contact us, and and we work that in coordination with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. We share each other. I mean, they're really the authority on that, but we do have a calendar that we keep up, and we also produce every day at Firefighter Close Calls. If you go to our history page, every day there's a list of either very significant fires or line of duty deaths going back to the 1800s sometimes. We got a great guy, one of our crew, Carl Newberger, who does that stuff. So yeah, it's available there as well. Again, and no credit card required, no PayPal, no Venmo. It's all free.
Such a cool website. We really do appreciate you guys doing that. And sir, it's been a real honor having you on here. No joke. It's been really cool talking to you. You're a wealth of knowledge. I could sit down with you for days. We'd love to have you to come back in the future, possibly with Gordon Graham, or even again by yourself if you'd be into doing that.
Gordon would love to come on and we can do something together. We do generally exclusively our program is at FDIC. We do something each year together, but we do webinars and it's always a pleasure. And as you've learned, we don't work off scripts. We just bring us on and we'll try our best to not disappoint you. And that's the same way with Gordon. We have a good time and hopefully we can share some of the opportunities we've had with people. And thank you for having me on today. And thanks for what you're doing with this podcast. It makes a difference.
Well, thank you, sir. We really appreciate all that you do.
Take care. Have a great new year.
All right. You too. Just want to address everybody out there. Thanks again for checking out #Remember. If you like what you hear, please spread the word with a #Remember on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And don't forget, After the Fire podcast, the NFFF, and Firefighter Skills are all on social media. Befriend us and please be part of our community. You can also check out other After the Fire podcast episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and afterthefirepodcast.com. Thanks again to the great Chief Billy Goldfeder. We sincerely are grateful to have you on our show. Make sure you join us next time with the president of the Abbott Volunteer Firefighters and witness to the West Texas ammonium nitrate plant explosion, Doreen Strickland. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you after the fire.